Patricio Batalon in Mexico, which was the basis for an MGM Movie Award and 2 award-winning documentaries. And more recently, Abraham Lincoln in Mexico, which is under consideration for a Netflix series. He is the Chief University Consultant for the College Board's Advanced Placement Program in this region, and the Latin American Consultant for the State Department's Office of Overseas Schools. A former head of the English Department and Social Studies Department at ASFG from 1990 to 2004. Dr. Hogan founded our literary magazine, Sin Fronteras, and began the Advanced Placement Program at ASFG. He is now an Emeritus Humanities Chair at the school, mentoring AP Capstone Seminar and AP Research students. This is his 28th annual keynote speech to the National Honor Society. Please join me in welcoming Dr. Michael Hogan.
Thank you, Regina. That was a mouthful. Teachers here tonight, and to the veteran and soon-to-be inducted members of the National Honor Society. This is a special event for me, since, as Regina said, it's my 28th year speaking before this group. And I've always found something original to say each time, usually about history, which is my passion. But this month, as I was brainstorming, I thought, well, this speech tonight is history. Here I am myself, a member of the NHS, class of 1960, inducted back in the mid-20th century when John F. Kennedy was President of the United States and Adolfo Lopez Mateos was President of Mexico. We have a street now for him. And here I am addressing a new group for the 28th time who will carry the torch into the 21st century. So perhaps instead of talking about Socrates or Lincoln or World War I or Roosevelt, if I've been occasioned to tell a story based on my own history, and you as an audience can decide if it's relevant to you today, and if there are things we can learn from the more recent past. When I was in high school, there was a very popular book entitled How to Win Friends and Influence People. It was written by Dale Carnegie, and it has since sold over 15 million copies. It's the 7th most popular book ever published. It was a book originally intended for salesmen, and my father, who ran his own business, a hardware business, was especially impressed by the advice in the book and tried to follow it. Today we would call it a text on marketing, not necessarily of a product or a brand, but of oneself. And some of the advice was obvious. Pay attention to your customers, learn their names, know your product, be passionate about what you sell. Other bits seemed kind of odd to me, like always make sure your shoes are shined. What could having shined shoes have to do with anything? So I asked my dad, and he said, well, shoes are one of the most important items of dress, and that people make judgments about them. You could have a $1,000 suit, but if your shoes were scruffy and dull, you'd be judged as someone who was careless, someone who didn't pay attention to details or the impression you made on others. And thus your product and your services would be judged negatively as well. Well, that was long ago and in another era. What does it have to do with you today, or even me for that matter? Well, I followed my dad's advice. I always bought good quality shoes. I always had them shined. And I don't know if it made any difference in my daily work since I was not a salesman, but a teacher. I don't know that it made much difference to my students who were more worried about passing the AP exam than my footwear. But it did make a difference to one person, and that was me. I began the day knowing that one thing about my personal appearance was absolutely perfect. And no matter what the day brought, I could look down and feel satisfied that one part of me was still unruffled and shining. It was a confidence builder in the morning when I started off to school, and it was a consolation at the end of a difficult day. When I first retired, this is coming up on my 3rd retirement, I guess. When I first retired from this school in 2004, I went to work for the State Department and the College Board, and I traveled all over the world to 30 different countries. And in Buenos Aires one day, I was speaking with a university president, and he remarked, "In Argentina, we have a strange habit of judging people by their footwear. It's very odd. But I'd like to remark that you passed the test." We have this belief that people who care about their shoes are people who care about details and can be trusted to do the things they say they're going to do. I thought, thinking back to my father, and I wish he could have been there after 40 years and thousands of miles from home. Here was a man who agreed with him. I'd almost forgotten this incident when I arrived in Poland 5 years later, 2009, to meet with the Secretary of Education in the Presidential Cabinet Office, where I was trying to convince him that Poland should accept AP credits in all their universities. Our meeting went well, and he agreed to sign a formal commitment. And as I rose to take my leave, he said something quite odd. He remarked, "You might think this is strange, but I trusted you even before we met, just from reading your emails. They were so precise, so polite, so careful to explain every detail, that I felt you and your program was a good fit for Poland." I think emails in the 20th century are kind of like the salesman's shine shoes were in the 20th. It is often the first impression a business CEO or a government official gets upon which they base their proposals. I told him my father felt the same way about shine shoes. "Your father was Polish," he said. I laughed and I said, "No, my father wasn't Polish." But I explained how some ideas transcend national borders. Whether it was scruffy shoes or sloppy, ungrammatical emails, a proposal could be rejected before it was even presented because it reflected the lack of care on the part of the representative. We bonded that day in Warsaw, the Polish secretary and I, and we continue to be good friends today. My dad and mom passed on many bits of advice over the years. Most of them, like that of shine shoes, were seemingly frivolous, but grew in importance as I became more mature and had more experience in the world. My mother, for example, always had me write thank you letters. But it was not enough just to say thank you. You had to point out something specific that you liked about the gift you received. She was a person who felt that you should always take the time to find something true and sincere to say. She said that most people are kind, and I hope I've raised a son who is kind. But being kind is not enough. You must also learn to be thoughtful, to think, really think about the other person. The problem with so many people today is that they're too busy. They might wish to be kind, but they're too busy thinking about themselves and their problems and what they want to do next to be really thoughtful about others. Today, for most of us, the self is the center of the universe. My mother taught me to always try to find ways of putting others at the center, at least once in a while. Writing a thank you note, and this is a good time of year to reflect on this at Christmas. Writing a thank you note is one of those ways. Writing a note of consolation is another. When my mother died at the age of 93 a short time ago, we were all sad. I felt guilty. I felt guilty I had not called her often enough, thanked her often enough, told her how much I appreciated her. She had lived a good life, but I wondered if I had been a good son, if I had done what a good child does, if I'd appreciate the counsel and the care and the love that she had given to me and told her that. The day after her death, I got a note from Mr. McGrath. And I thought to myself, David McGrath, he doesn't even know my mother. What could he possibly say to me that would be real or sincere? And this is what his note said. Dear Mike, I was sorry to hear about your mother's death. Although I never met her, I know she must have been a beautiful and caring woman, because she raised a son who was compassionate and caring. You've honored her in your life and your work with the students at our school. Well, what a blessing that little note was. Not only did it praise my mother and compliment her on the one thing she always was most proud of, her children, but it also elevated my mood and removed some of my guilt, and it helped me feel that I had honored her just by living my life and being a decent person. So, when you stand up here tonight and take the oath for the National Honor Society and go over the characteristics of the members, Keep in mind two qualities which will serve you well, even though they're not as formal and as abstract, and you won't be reading off a card about them tonight. Keep your shoes shined and proofread those emails that you send out, because you are the center of the universe, and people need to see you're taking care of the small details which show your respect for yourself and the great gift of your life on the planet. But also send out those warm, sincere smiles and compliments and notes now and then, because those around you are the planets which bask in the sunshine of your globe. And you can make a big difference in someone's life by a kind and thoughtful word, and you may even live in their hearts forever. And now these final words. Young people think of the future. Old people think of the past. Like your grandparents here tonight, I have great memories of the past. And like your classmates sitting beside you, you have great hopes for the future. But as Ralph Waldo Emerson once noted, what lies before us and what lies behind us are tiny matters compared to what lies within us. There you will discover what make your days and years and those of the people you touched truly worth living. Congratulations and best wishes to you all, to your parents, your grandparents, your teachers who share your joy this evening. Un abrazo muy, muy fuerte.